GDC motherfucker.
Hello and welcome to episode 106 of Chet and John's reassuringly finite gaming playlist. My name's John Denton. With me this week is not Chet Roivas because he's fucked off to Germany. So with me instead is an old friend of mine and the editor of PC Gamer magazine, Mr. Samuel Roberts.
Hello, great to be here, John.
Fantastic to have you. Now, Samuel and I go way back. He's actually been on the podcast once before. I can't remember when, a while ago. But we both used to work together for a long time at Imagine Publishing, and Sam's gone on to do very, very great things, and is now the editor of the most, in my opinion, the most prestigious games mag in the world, which is amazing. So a real privilege to have Sam on, and enough of my rambling. Let's hear your number 10, Sam.
Okay, John, thanks for having me, first of all. My number 10 is Infamous Second Son on the PlayStation 4.
Nice.
That's cool. Yeah, basically, I played this for about 10 minutes at GDC this year because they had a stand with it. You know how, like at some shows they have like a game that's just come out that's fairly big deal. They sometimes still have it on the stand even though it's kind of just been recently out. Well, basically, Infamous Second Son is something I've wanted to play for a while because I think a lot of people have seen it as the kind of like, the kind of higher end PlayStation 4 exclusive. Like it's, PlayStation, basically on the PlayStation 4 so far you've had kind of knack Killzone, like kind of typical launch titles in terms of their technical capabilities. Like Infamous Second Son has, obviously it's an open world game, so has quite remarkable particle effects and environmental design. So basically I wanted to have a quick go at it, and I was kind of watched the entire time I was playing at GDC, which was a little bit intimidating, but basically basically I kind of had a go at it and was experimenting with the abilities that Delsin Rowe has, and didn't kind of get much of a feel for it other than it feels exactly like the last two Infamous games in that it's kind of typical open world fare with a little bit of superhero stuff, and it's kind of enjoyable. But I other than the kind of like character models and the actual kind of build up of the world itself, it actually feels like a last gen game. Have you played it at all?
Well, I'll actually talk about it later. Yeah, it's later on in my list, in fact. So I won't go into detail now.
That's cool. Maybe we should leave it for now then. But,
sure.
It's certainly interesting in the realms of PlayStation exclusives. Like it's kind of a big win for them in some ways, but then not so much in others. So let's talk about it later, I guess.
Awesome. Okay, my number 10 is not as good as that. It is a game called Cristiano Ronaldo Footy on the Android. This is also available.
Change, John.
Sorry?
You never change.
No. This is also available on iOS, and it is obviously a licensed Cristiano Ronaldo football game. Now, if you think of Cristiano Ronaldo, whether you like the guy or not, if you assuming you know who he is, I'm sure most people do. Chet probably wouldn't, but no, even he would actually, because he's the bane of his life on FIFA. So Cristiano Ronaldo, you think like unbelievable skill, speed, style, kind of luxury. One of the world's greatest athletes ever. His game couldn't be any less like that. It is unbelievable, and I don't want to overestimate or underestimate, or whatever the best way of describing it is. This game is fucking shit. Cristiano Ronaldo, unbelievably fast, amazingly skillful. This game, I think it might be a 3-on-3, like a five-a-side, equivalent to five-a-side, but there's less players. You can't run. You can only walk. So these players walk around the pitch. You can kick the ball at the goal. The goalie won't even recognise what's happening. If it happens to hit him, he'll save it. But otherwise, you'll score a goal. It's the worst football game I've ever played, and I have played some fucking bad football games. I've played onside on the PS1.
You played Adidas Power Soccer, right?
Yeah, but that makes this game... this game makes that look like FIFA 14. This is awful. I cannot believe that... What a license, if the one of the two greatest footballers of all time, and this is the game, Cristiano Ronaldo Footy. Footy. Fucking hell, I couldn't believe how shit it is.
So how does it kind of control, like,
you kind of use the touchscreen to walk about, and I do mean walk about, and then you can kind of press a button to pass, and there's a different button to shoot, but It's just so awful. It's so bad. It looks like it's been made in minutes. He may have made it himself, actually, and if he did, then fair play, because he probably doesn't have a lot of time. So if he did make it himself, I take it all back, because he can do no wrong.
Was it worse than Ubisoft's Pure Football?
Oh my god, which one was Pure Football?
Pure Football was the one with Steven Gerrard on the front of the box. Remember that?
Christ,
it was like 4 years ago.
Was that as bad as Chris Kamara's Street Soccer?
The fact that exists is just, I think like the kind of, I don't know, I feel like I hear the death tolls of mankind when I hear that. Like, that's got to be the end.
Yeah. There was that period where there were lots of football games because...
Anyone could have a football game.
Yeah.
Michael Owen's World League Soccer, you know?
Yeah,
like
I had that.
That wasn't actually not too bad in his defence. But yeah, it's just FA Premier League All-Stars and stuff like that. It's you could just kind of
this
spit
is
them out.
football. Yeah. There were those 3 lines.
This is football.
Sorry?
This is football wasn't too bad.
No, it wasn't. It was actually quite good. Yeah, there were a few that were like all kind of competing in that level playing field for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Pro Evo smashed it, and then FIFA, they put some money in it, and the rest is history. But yeah, don't play Cristiano Ronaldo footy.
Well, that's good advice. I probably never will, to be honest.
No, I
but
wouldn't. It's horrendous.
I just wonder what kind of leads people to sign off their kind of names on games like that are just truly appalling. Is it just the kind of promise of a quick buck, I guess? I don't know.
I don't know, because, I mean, surely that's a... he doesn't need the money. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around why. I just can't wrap my head around why. Surely you'd look at it and go, yeah, these players don't run and I'm the fastest player in the world. Oh, well.
Well, never mind.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's never played it, so I won't worry about
Very
it.
true.
Okay, my number 9 is completely left field here. It's Final Fantasy 9 on the PlayStation 1.
That is left field. They didn't have that at GDC.
No, they didn't. Basically, when I went to GDC, I kind of packed out my PS Vita with basically everything I owned on PlayStation 3.
Ah, of course.
I put onto my PlayStation Vita, and I just thought, okay, then this can be a long playing journey. Then I'll kind of get through whatever I can. And also, in the recent months, I've been getting through Final Fantasy 7 and 8, which I know you just have no opinions on whatsoever, John.
No, I've played them all.
That's cool, but I know that that kind of series just sort of flies over your head a little bit. It's just like, well, that's kind of how I've always seen it.
Yeah, no, it's probably I was dulled by people liking them too much in the office where we used to work. Actually, I really liked 7 and I liked 8 a lot when I was also an angsty teenager.
Well, I like to say that I've grown out of that, but that would be a lie.
Yeah.
But 9's actually quite a different deal. It's basically 9 is the last one they released on PS1, like a few months actually before they released a new one on PS2, and so it looks quite high end for a PS1 game. Like the backgrounds look really nice, and it's got a very different tone to 8 and 7, less of an angsty teenage vibe and more of a Zelda vibe actually.
Okay.
Like kind of a lot more sort of medieval atmosphere to the environments. It was very much harking back to the SNES era Final Fantasy games, and so. Even though the combat system's a little bit kind of simplistic, it kind of looks nice and it's quite a pleasant world to be in. It's got kind of more of a piratey vibe. And I played about 5 hours of it, and I think it is actually, I can see why it has a very different fan base to 7 or 8. It's it's a really different deal. I think it's the last one the series creator Sakaguchi worked on before he left. And I think it still holds up really well. It's great music, great art direction. It's Squaresoft at their best, really, before they became, what they are now, which is a little bit kind of contentious in the eyes of fans. I'm still kind of a fan of 9, and basically I was kind of playing 9 in a run up to 10 being re-released, which I'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay.
I was trying to get through all of them before 10 came out, and I didn't quite succeed.
Did you manage to get all the way through 7 and 8 though?
Yes.
Oh wow.
I actually completed 8 about 2 weeks ago. I kind of got delayed on a train for like 3 hours and then completed 8 in that time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, basically I've been working my way through them because I wanted to sort of see if they were as good as I imagined they were when I was 15, and they are actually. Like 7 and 8 actually have their own kind of innovations on Japanese RPG design that's really kind of quite worthy. And 9's not quite as progressive in the kind of way the combat and customization is done, but it's still, in terms of world building, really kind of high up there. So yeah, I still really recommend it, and it holds up quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I played those. 7 I remember playing because it was the game that you had to play, and I'd never played a game like that before in my life. I had no idea what I was playing, in fact. I didn't really understand them, but for a long part of 7, you can basically win every fight by just doing the basic attack. And then when it got complicated and required you to actually use the game systems, I just got completely lost. All I can remember is you kept finding lots of items, and I just thought they were junk. And I remember asking someone about them years later, and they're like, "Oh no, every single item you find is so you can use it in some way." Yeah,
Well,
I was never going to get to the end.
Well, when you hear advice like that, I imagine it makes the game sound quite boring. But actually, what kind of 7 has over 8 and 9 is that it's the last. Basically, a problem I find with all RPGs is that the third quarter of all RPGs tends to be weak in terms of narrative and the stuff you're actually doing. But 7 is actually really good at that, because at the end of the second act of 7, they kind of release a whole bunch of these kind of like Godzilla-like creatures into the environment. They're called weapons, and basically hunting them down one by one, and the way they kind of have an impact on the world just completely changes the setup of 7. And then you're like in a submarine, you're doing all kinds of different stuff. You fight, and then eventually you kind of build up that fight with Sephiroth. 9 and 8 don't quite have that same level of pacing, but they are still really well built in themselves. Like in terms of world building, I don't think Final Fantasy really gets the credit it deserves, particularly in terms of art direction, which I think 9's really up there for the series actually. Like that kind of slightly medieval vibe mixed with a little bit of Zelda. I think it's really sharp, but it's underappreciated, I think, because of the time it came out in the PS1's life cycle.
How much do they cost on Vita?
I think they're $7.99, but I basically bought all of them for like $3.99 at a sale. Square Enix does Square Enix does a sale every year. Like I'd wait for that if you're going to pick them up and you're kind of curious. But anyone who likes that series has probably already bought them already.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you've made me feel like I want to play them, but that's not going to happen. I've got to be a realist here.
Well, I appreciate that. Your honesty, John. That's fair enough.
Right. Okay, my number 9 is probably like the polar opposite of a Final Fantasy game. It's 10 Second Ninja, which I've been... I don't know if you've heard previous episodes where I was speaking about this game, or if you've heard of this game.
You talked about the Nazis and your girlfriend's outrage towards the Nazis.
Yes, my wife, in fact, but yeah. It was more disappointment in me as someone who plays video games than the game itself, I think. But yeah, I've been going back through the game trying to hoover up the 3-star ratings on some of the harder levels, it gets to the point where you kind of question what you're doing and why you're doing it, as fun as it is. But I wouldn't hold that against the game at all. It's just a marvellous piece of design. I love the fact it's basically made by one guy. He's a very young guy, and it's just so exciting that we live in a time where someone with that level of talent and dedication can just put something out that is, marvellously well designed like this, and it becomes a hit. Relatively speaking, low budget. Well, budgets have become very relative when you're working on your own. I don't even know his living situation. Why would I? I don't. That would be weird. But it's a very, very well made game. It's going for I think £5 or £6 on Steam. I've said this before. It's destined for consoles. I think a Vita version, which I'm sure will eventually happen, seeing as how on the ball they are in terms of getting these games on PlayStation formats. It'll be an absolutely killer game on PlayStation Vita, especially with all the leaderboards and everything.
Yeah, I completely agree. Having played say for example, Stealth Inc. on PS Vita, it's just tailor-made for that sort of game. So yeah, hopefully it finds its way over there. I'm
sure it will. In fact, I think he said that he's seen it running on PlayStation consoles at GDC. Someone else was doing it, like someone that he's partnered with already had a build running on PlayStation consoles, kind of unofficially. So yeah, It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Wow, they're really on it with that stuff. How many hours have you played it for? Like, do you feel like you've got the most out of the concept now?
I played a ton of it. It's now got to the point where I could dedicate time to get those 3-star ratings, and when you get one, goodness, it's seriously satisfying. It's proper try and pull the pad in half, like that mixture of kind of rage and triumph that you get with some games. It absolutely nails that. But there are so many games that to dedicate the time, I don't know. But I must have put 10 hours into it.
Wow.
So for £5 or £6 or something, I did the review in the end to a Eurogamer, so that was a sort of work-related reason to make sure I played all the levels and did as much as I can. But I would have probably done it anyway, I think.
That's cool. I might check that out, actually, because, a lot of people are saying good things about it, about the kind of ingenuity behind the basic idea.
Yeah, it's a very good idea, very, very well executed. Not sure about the Nazis, but easy on.
Yeah, sure. Okay, right. Well, less Nazi-related is my number 8, which is Hyper Light Drifter on PC.
Yeah.
Do you know about this?
I've seen the trailers. I'm aware of its work. Yeah, I'm kind of pumped for it.
Yeah, basically, it was a massive Kickstarter success. It's got quite distinctive visuals, and when I was at GDC, I met two of the developers who kind of talked me through what is basically kind of like a horde mode version of the game's combat, which is which actually reminded me a little bit of Devil May Cry. Actually, you have a kind of slash, you have like a kind of slash attack, and then you have a kind of like how to describe it, like a skim move. Like if you played Devil May Cry 3, it's like the kind of trickster move in that,
right?
Where you kind of like move quickly out of enemies' attack range. And basically, in this one mode, they were just kind of showcasing the variety of their combat, where you can choose two different weapons to go into combat with, and none of them are kind of boring. Like you have the basic attack, but then you have kind of like a laser sight rifle that moves through loads of different enemies, so you can shoot like a number of enemies at once. There's like a homing grenade, which locks onto nearby enemies and kills them. There's a kind of nice shotgun as well. And so the idea is that if there's two of you on screen, then you both kind of team up, pick the right combination for the both of you, and then kind of cover your bases basically. Okay. And there are different size enemies that kind of march into it. And it's cool because the cool thing about this is that I found there's an enormous amount of longevity just in this kind of horde style mode, but this isn't even the game. The game itself is a kind of like a massive sort of adventure built across this huge world as well. And so that entire side of it hasn't even been seen in the game yet. I've just seen the combat side of it, and basically they've built it so there's nothing tedious or weak about the combinations you can build as a player. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's really going to be a kind of a proper sort of indie hit, and I think that's because they've had the money to have the freedom to experiment with their combat system and their world building, and they sound like a really switched on bunch of guys, and I think it's really going to take off.
So is the world itself, is it all designed or is it randomly generated?
Yeah, it's completely designed. Nice. They've talking to them, they've kind of reined back on certain sort of ideas because they were worried they were too ambitious. But if you check out the Kickstarter, they were trying to raise $27,000 and they ended up raising $645,000.
It's a good effort.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. And so they are trying to create a world that's kind of intriguing, but at the same time is just really engaging to play. It's not kind of at all pretentious. It's really pretty looking. Like I spoke to the guy who's kind of working on the art direction side of things, and basically he threw out loads of different sort of art styles until he got the one he's happy with in terms of like simplicity but also consistency across the world. And if you see the enemies, it's colorful, but it's really quite striking when you see it. Like most of the images they've been using to sell the game are actually GIFs. If you look on their Kickstarter page, there's loads of kind of different GIFs on there. That's because they're obviously really proud of the animation, the character designs they've sort of built together. And I think it's just going to find a massive audience. And without even having seen the bulk of the game, just seeing the combat, it's so impressive. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that one, especially when, as you tell me, it's not randomly generated. I like games that are, but there's something to be said for a world that's completely designed.
Well, I don't believe it is. I don't think that was ever kind of mentioned. It's it's got alternate paths and secret loot and stuff, but it's handcrafted as far as I know. It's I think it'll really take off.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Okay, my number 8 is weirdly it's Mass Effect 3. I was asked to write a little article going back and looking at the online side of the game, so I did. And I was kind of surprised actually. I hadn't actually played that much online Mass Effect 3. I was surprised for two reasons. The first being that the community is still very much there. It was very easy to get a game, even with players at a low level, which suggests that there's going to be a ton of high-level players playing the harder difficulty stuff as well. And the second reason I was surprised is that, it really is quite good fun. I'd heard how good it is, but I was always a bit iffy about Mass Effect's combat as a whole. I always thought it was kind of perfunctory and served the game well, especially in 2 and 3. But I never really wanted to play that as on its own. I didn't want to play that kind of divorced from any story or dialogue or anything like that. But in terms of what it is, which is just a 4-player horde mode with a few little mission ideas that come up mid-match, it's really good. It's very, very good, actually. The combat feels snappier. The way that the different races because you can pick like humans or Turians and all that other shit, and they've all got. Then you can do the different classes within that. The way they blend together, you can see with the other players on your team what class and what race they are very, very quickly. So you kind of develop tactics on the fly, and it's not one of those horde modes that last forever either. It's 10 waves, and then the final thing is a Titanfall-esque escape, where you're trying to get the fuck out of there while holding off the enemy. It's just get into a circle in the map and while a clock runs down. So it's not quite as dramatic as Titanfall, but it's still really nice. And yeah, I was impressed by it. I like the in between matches you go to the store and you use the credit that you get in the matches to kind of unlock these boxes where you get like single use items and different things like that. I know that's where the kind of in-app purchase side of the game comes in, but it never really felt like in the small time that the few hours that I played that was anything too pervasive or anything like that. I don't begrudge that stuff, particularly for online games that are going to be stretched out over a long period of time, because I think it's understandable that companies need to support that financially as long as it doesn't impinge the design too much, and it doesn't seem like it does. So I was just pleasantly surprised in every respect, really. Not that I'll be going back to it, I don't have time or massively the inclination, but I was expecting to go in and being quite bored, or just there'd be nobody on there, but not the case on either point.
Interesting, because I think of the games like that are primarily single player, and then the multiplayer kind of gets shouted down by the internet, and then I kind of assume that they die out, not through kind of lack of merit, just because that's a sort of consensus that seems to be. But I don't know, I kind of like that you enjoyed it and that it's has its own kind of audience. Like there's nothing wrong with Mass Effect 3's shooting mechanics as such. It's just you don't typically expect a game like that to find a multiplayer audience. No,
not at all. I knew that it kind of had a bit of a following at first, but I went, checked out the forums, checked out NeoGAF and stuff like that, and there's people playing it, discussing tactics, talking about high-level play and things like that. So, yeah, it is cool. It reminds me of when you were young and you couldn't afford to get many games, so you got the most out of what you had, as opposed to these days where you kind of jump on to the next game. Certainly, what we do for a living, that's kind of the part of it, and that's no complaints at all, but it's nice that these games have these, like you say, long-standing communities.
Yeah, totally. I always kind of, I think one of the points of contention at the time as well is that it could contribute to your end score for Mass Effect 3. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah, your galactic readiness or whatever it was called. Yeah,
you say it like that, it sounds really, really silly.
That's probably why everybody died in my game, so I didn't play it.
Yeah. It was it was the kind of same here, and I just remember seeing that bar and thinking that's really annoying. I realised they were trying to encourage. I mean, I'm sure they see that as a mistake now, but I'm sure they were just trying to encourage people to play this mode that they'd obviously put hours and hours into. So, it's I don't know, it's an interesting one. I'd never even really kind of considered playing it before. I'm still pleased they found a kind of devoted audience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Okay, so my number 7 is Eve Valkyrie on PC.
Okay.
This is an Oculus Rift game, which it's basically a multiplayer shooter spin-off of EVE Online, where you, wearing the headset, you look at enemy spaceships to target them. Then using a control pad or a mouse and keyboard, you release kind of missiles to hit the spaceships that you're targeting. So you kind of have to follow them with your eyes.
Okay.
If you've never kind of encountered this before, it's like it's kind of like one of the sort of killer apps for VR, I guess. And I got to play it quite a bit at GDC, and it works really really well. It's just an incredibly sort of like nice multiplayer shooter that doesn't require a lot of kind of complex simulation or aiming and stuff like that. It's very light. It reminds me a bit of Rogue Squadron, I guess. Okay. On if you ever played that on N64 or Rogue Leader on GameCube, and a little bit of X-Wing as well, I suppose, on PC. But basically, it's kind of as simple as that in terms of what I've played. But I interviewed the producer at the time, and he kind of explained that they're still building the modes on top of that stuff to make it into more of a kind of long-term kind of game that Eve fans might enjoy, as opposed to something that's a little bit throwaway. Basically, the team at CCP kind of realised that. Do you remember Dust 514 on PlayStation 3?
Yeah, I played that. Yeah,
and it was really boring, right?
So it was pretty shit.
Exactly. So I think they've kind of learned a lot of lessons from that in terms of launching something new in that universe that might be, I don't know, detrimental to that brand or not interesting.
Yeah.
But you play this and you kind of, with the Rift headset on, you look up and then you see the kind of target reticule turn red. You unleash some kind of rockets going towards an enemy, you blow a ship up, and, kind of fly through the debris. And it's really exciting. Like if when you get the chance to try that, it's just such a kind of validation of the Oculus Rift and, also the, is it Project Morpheus? I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah, Morpheus, something Morpheus, yeah.
Something Morpheus. But yeah, it really kind of makes that sort of stuff look like the kind of future of those games because it's not too cumbersome in the way you control it. So yeah, it's really, really impressive, and I'm very happy I got a chance to try it.
Yeah, that's awesome. My very brief experience of the Oculus Rift was a bit disappointing. I don't know if you heard that one in the previous episode. It was on a quite a boring game, and two people stood behind me having a flirting, basically, right? One in my left ear, one in my right, which kind of spoiled the immersion. But I'm still very excited about the whole thing, regardless of whether it's been bought by Facebook or whatever. I don't care. And if you back a Kickstarter and it doesn't do what you want it to, and you ask for your money back, you're a fucking idiot. Quite frankly, you're a stupid person. If you're going to pay money for something that doesn't exist, don't expect to get it back. It's
a strange one because we're very lucky to have an Oculus Rift unit in the office, and I think we'll probably buy like the second generation dev kit as well, which makes the whole image into HD. And like when you try a bunch of tech demos with it, it's really impressive. Like Andy Kelly, one of our section editors, he tried it on with basically like a kind of theatre tech demo where any film you've kind of got on your hard drive, you can play in this kind of virtual theatre and then watch it on the big screen. So you can have like a Blade Runner going on in a cinema in there, and it was kind of like oddly immersive. I know that kind of sounds strange because you're watching a video in on like kind of panel in a virtual world, but I don't know. It sort of showcases like the kind of vast potential of something like that where it can kind of replicate an experience quite convincingly. So yeah, I'm kind of sad that two people were flirting in your ear while that was going on. That wasn't part of the game, I assume.
No, it was a game about being in a World War II plane, so I don't think so. No.
I kind of that's kind of come back to me now. But yeah, I mean, you should try it again, definitely.
Oh yeah, because... no, I'm there. I was thinking about investing in one of those dev kits myself, in fact. So I'm there. I'm all about it. I was very excited when I queued up to play it at Eurogamer. But it was spoiled slightly. But maybe I'd built it up too much in my own mind.
Well, possibly. But if you pretend you're a developer on the Oculus VR site, then you can get one for $350, which actually is not unreasonable at all. Once you see the capabilities of it, and it'll definitely run with your PC, John. Yeah. But once you see it in action, you won't kind of regret it. Like I was walking around Jerry Seinfeld's apartment a couple of weeks ago.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's the kind of daft shit that people are doing with it, and people are really kind of discovering a sense of like you can really kind of affect the player with something that seems quite passive when you're just looking at it on a screen. Yeah. Like just being in the place is enough to make it kind of interesting, which is I think are really important in terms of the potential game design for it, because it means you don't have to be shooting stuff or like curb stomping something to get a kind of sense of feedback.
Still, curb stomping is pretty good.
Well, if you like your gears, John, that's fine. Yeah. But
I just like curb stomping.
Fair enough.
Is it me? It is, isn't it?
It is. Number 7.
So my number 7 is actually EA MMA. Weirdly, I went to go and see my younger brother in Brighton this weekend, and whenever we hook up, we always play a few rounds on EA MMA, and it still holds up. It's still just a really marvelous game. The new EA UFC game is coming out later this year, and I played that, but the build that I played was not ready. And the frame rate was screwed, and the responsiveness was terrible. So you couldn't really get any idea of whether it was going to be good or not. But I still think, as good as that game looks, it'll be hard pressed to manage to recreate the kind of drama that happens in EA MMA. It's just one of those games where all the systems combine, and they've been refined to the point where you have these just amazing stories. Like that's what great sport is. That's why people are so fascinated by sport, and a sport as pure as mixed martial arts as well. It's all about narrative. It's all about stories. All about drama, and it manages to capture that quite well. We had an amazing 5-round matches, and they actually it's one of the rare games that does its timing. Its in-game clock is actually real time. So a 5-round fight is 5 rounds. It actually literally takes 25 minutes to play. Whereas on other MMA games, they speed the clock up, so you never quite get that same feeling of. Well, it's actually almost quite exhausting by the end of it, certainly mentally. Another amazing fight which ended with this like brutal head kick and the way he fell down. It's just a really, I mean, it's just a marvellous game. It's a shame they turned the servers off a while ago now. I understand because I think only 19 people bought the game, so you can't really... and the online stuff was quite complicated. It had like inbuilt streaming and all this sort of stuff, so I understand why they turned it off, but it is a shame. But yeah, that team isn't the same team that's making the new UFC game, which concerns me slightly because it's maligned by some, but I think it's just one of the truly great fighting games. It's marvellous, and this weekend only kind of confirmed what I already knew.
That's cool. But I kind of played a little bit at the time, and it is quite complex to get used to in terms of controls.
Yeah, it is. Oh yeah, I mean, it's kind of the problem with the sport, right? Not only have you got to learn what's essentially a boxing game, you've also got to learn a kickboxing game, and then you've got all of the grappling stuff, which is complicated before you even start trying to assign button commands and stick commands and all that sort of stuff. You have to understand what you're looking at first. So there's just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. So yeah, there's no way of it not being complicated if it's going to be any good at all, I think. And yeah, certainly UFC is very complicated in that respect. So that might be off-putting to some people who don't follow the sport as obsessively as a nutter like me. But I'm still very excited, very, very excited for that game. That's still one of my most anticipated games of the year. I'm always up for a bit of ruckage.
Yeah, I think that it will do well on next gen because kind of looking at like Fight Night Round 3 last generation, where they kind of took that sport and they turned it into something reasonably complex, not quite as complex as EA Sports MMA, or presumably what UFC is as well. They did, they took away the HUD. It was very much it wasn't very traditional in terms of a game like that.
Yeah.
And I think that being on next gen and being able to be a graphical showcase for what next gen can do was a massive kind of deal breaker for Fight Night Round 3. And so I think that they could potentially have the same impact here, because by preempting Fight Night arriving on PS4 and Xbox One, I think that they can potentially find an audience with the UFC that they might not have found otherwise, if you know what I mean. I think that EA Sports...
I completely agree. If it's difficult because the version I played just it was really disappointing, but I know that they're not going to release it in that state, so it certainly looks the part, right? It's going to do, if the game holds up and it plays smoothly and responsively, it will do very similar things, because I can still remember being in the office back at Imagine when that game came in, and that got crowds like no other game has ever got. Everybody wanted everybody wanted to watch it. Everybody was like, and those the slow motion replays of the knockout shots, and yeah, this just takes that visually to another level. I mean, you've seen video, I don't know if you have, but there has been video released of the game, and there's a lot of people online, on Reddit and things like that going, oh yeah, but that's just cinematics. And it's like, no, I promise you, the game does look like that. It is outstanding. It's an outstanding looking game. But MMA, it doesn't look like that, but certainly plays tremendously well.
It's a real victim of the end of the generation, I guess, because it came out in 2000. Is that 2010? I guess.
Yeah,
around that time. Yeah, and so basically it was I think it was released around the summer as well, and that didn't help it in terms of finding an audience. It just kind of got lost.
Yeah, it was tough, and it didn't have the license, and it struggled with some people who preferred the UFC game, and it just really struggled. But I'll always have a special place in my heart for that game.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I look forward to playing UFC. I think that EA's got a good chance of finding an audience there.
Yeah, I mean, when a game looks that good, it does have a level of appeal even beyond its subject matter.
I agree, because I actually I'm quite a big fan of Fight Night Round 4, but not Round 3. I understand Round 3 was a graphical showcase, and I think the character models actually might have been of a higher resolution than they were in Round 4.
Yeah,
but Round being kind of more refined was always the big deal breaker for me. But no, I really can't wait to see what they've done with it.
It's actually the same creative director as Round 4 and Champion, who's the main guy on this game. So
I love Champion, Well, in some parts I love Champion, but the story mode, we all know about the what's it called? The Rocky guy who knocks you out. He was like Drago, you know, in the story mode.
That was like Ice Thunder. I can't remember. Yeah,
Something like that. The story mode in that game was really interesting, but I feel like it was kind of ruined by having these balked boss fights where it's like you've got a poorly arm, so you can't fight properly.
that final fight was a fucking nightmare.
It was, yeah. No, I can't wait for EA Sports UFC. Genuinely one of the few kind of sports games that I'm really interested in on next gen in terms of what it can do. Yeah, that's cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Cool. So my number 6 is Hotline Miami on Vita. And
fantastic.
I will say the reason for this, I know you guys have talked about Hotline Miami's death on this podcast, but John, your scores are obscene on Vita. They are disgusting.
Really?
Some of them are so high that I don't know. Even if I retired, I don't know how I'd even get close to them.
But I don't think they're that good at all.
But they are.
Can't
Some
even
of them
get
are like
that high ratings on some of them.
I think it's like the 4th level. I swear you're like near the top 1,000 on the score there.
I'll tell you why on the 4th level. Because I reviewed this game for Games DM, and this was before I had a good PC. But I figured it would run on my old PC, which didn't really have a graphics card, and it did. But when they released the game, it was fucked, basically, for some people. The game was completely broken, and I was one of those people. And it got stuck on level 4. And obviously the game's quite hard anyway, especially when you're new to it. But I did the bottom floor of level 4. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if someone came in and told me I'd done it 1,000 times. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I would get to the stairs, and then the game would crash. So I just keep doing it again and again and again. And then obviously I've done it again on Vita many times as well. I hated that level for a long time, and I now love it. So I wouldn't that makes me happy that my score is there. I had no idea, but
yeah, it's so much higher than. I mean, I'm miles ahead of everyone else in my PlayStation Network leaderboard, and also I think this would be helped by the fact that if it saved scores on Vita, that you could then later upload on the leaderboards. Because I play a lot of Hotline Miami on the train, but you're still miles ahead of me in like about 2 or 3 levels, and in a way that I will just never even get close to you. So I am impressed.
The problem with that game is I can't really work out how to get a high score, so I think it must just be luck. I know you have to chain things together.
No, you're like me in that you use the frog mask, right? That's the one that extends your combo window.
Yes, I've started to use that. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best one. By far, that's the best one. But yeah, even with that, I'm not quite doing it, and I'm hitting like A pluses and stuff like that, and you know, I feel like I'm at the top of my game in Hotline Miami. In fact, I think last time we hung out, I think I was even talking about how good I was getting at it. Yeah. And then I saw your scores, and much like you with Rock Band Blitz and Chet, I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake.
I bet his are way higher than mine.
So yeah, it's just that I'm just I fear that I'm not quite good enough to ever get close to your score, but.
I'm sorry, I feel bad. It's just that I have no idea that I was even had a good score, and I think it was just luck. So don't feel bad, because I can't get above a C on most levels, I don't think.
Well, it's interesting because I actually think that one of the advantages the Vita has over the 3DS actually is that if you're kind of like me, where you're playing a game for maybe 10 minutes at a time, then you're changing trains or whatever, then I actually think the Vita is better equipped for that sort of thing than the 3DS. I think all the 3DS games I have, like Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem, Bravely Default, I don't know, anything from like any kind of high-profile game from the past few years, apart from maybe like Mario Kart, requires at least a 30-minute commitment.
Yeah,
like it requires you to properly get into it. Vita, because of the way the kind of like how brilliantly it's done in terms of like being on standby, you can just pick up and play those games perfectly. Like it's an ideal handheld for a very specific type of person, which I suppose is probably why it's not selling well. But Hotline Miami is suited to that platform in a way that is quite hard to kind of convey, really. But it's just so perfect for it. Like it's like 5 minutes to play at a time. You can rinse a level in that time and then move on. And I don't think the 3DS has anything quite like that.
I completely agree with you, and also I can't see my 3DS screen on the train. Well, my old 3DS, but then I lost it with all my games, which is fucking nightmare.
That's terrible.
But I completely agree with you about PlayStation Vita, which brings me, in fact, very nicely to my next one, my number 6, which is Luftrausers. Actually on PC, but I know it's on Vita. I've been meaning to buy it on Vita, but I haven't yet. Same deal though. A game that's perfectly suited to that form to be able to play for 10 minutes. Have you any experience with this yet?
I don't, but our staff writer Ben Griffin reviewed it for us, and he made it basically talked about how there's a kind of musical aspect to the way in which you interact with the game, with lots of tiny airplanes flying around and stuff. It's quite rich, and there's a lot to unlock, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's one of those games that's structured around challenges. So it's a one life game. You try and get as high a score as you can, but within that you're doing challenges, and then as you do that you level up, and then you unlock more stuff, and then you can kind of retool your plane. There's 3 different ways you can retool it: the weapon, the armor, and the engine. But because it's played by Vlambeer, everything's fucking daft. So like one of the first things that you can unlock is a thing that allows you to fly underwater, and there's like different types of guns that you will. Literally the first thing you unlock is a laser, and this is like a World War II shooter. But every single build of your airplane, and I think there's 125 in total, changes the music, and it's absolutely brilliant. Quite frankly, it'll take like one track away from the music and add a new one, which changes the whole tune every single time. And every single build also has a name. It's just, I've never seen that before, and it adds so much class to an already extremely enjoyable shooter. A game that plays differently to most shooters. You're kind of spiraling on the point of being out of control the whole time, but sort of in control at the same time. The combat has this brilliant mechanic where you can take a certain amount of damage, and the only way to heal that damage is to stop shooting. So essentially you're playing this like mid-air spiraling game of chicken the whole time, and we're trying to survive, trying to blow up battleships on the bottom, trying to blow up all the little planes around you. And then as you get further on, crazy stuff starts to happen, like giant blimps come in, and I don't know if you've played many Vlambeer games before, but they all have this kind of like anarchic sense of humour running through them.
Yeah.
And this is definitely that. It's got very high reviews all over the place. I'm definitely going to get it on Vita, because as good as it is on PC, I think I play on the big screen on PC, and it's a bit too big for a game like this, I think. And 2, it's a game that I want to play for 10 minutes, like a couple of times a day maybe, and that's not really that's not what I have a PC for. If I only had a PC, then fine, but you know me, as with you need to get everything. So that does seem like the place where it's going to be best, and by all accounts it's a marvellous version on PlayStation Vita, but a very, very, very good game.
It's I think it's like £7 on all formats, so it's pretty reasonably priced.
Yeah.
Might be one I get on multiple formats actually, because that art direction's pretty damn nice.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. It's kind of like almost a Game Boy aesthetic, but everything's all the animation's so smooth, and yeah, I like Vlambeer, man. They're fucking cool. They make cool games.
That's cool. It's been a long time coming, Luftrausers. I remember being excited about it since like early last year. So
yeah, I played it. It was actually played at the same time as Hotline Miami 2 at Eurogamer. They were sat next to each other at Eurogamer last year as well. So yeah, it's definitely it's taken its time, but worth it. Definitely worth the wait.
I'll check that out probably after this podcast. Actually, that'll be
awesome.
Yeah, that'll be good.
The Vita is just it's perfect.
Cool.
Platform for it.
Absolutely. Okay, so my number 5 is Alien Isolation. I think I was playing it on PC. It was hard to work out. I was playing it at GDC. This was the first demo that was released for the game that coincided with a bunch of cover exclusives, including ours. And basically, it's a kind of a really kind of it's not short as such, but it's the actual time you get to spend with the alien is short. But it illustrates how much the AI of the creature that Creative Assembly has created for the game is tuned to basically respond to the way you play the game. And it's so impressive, honestly. It's obviously if you've been playing Alien Alien Colonial Marines, then this is the complete opposite of that sort of game.
Everything's impressive if you've been playing Aliens Colonial Marines.
Exactly. This is like the opposite of that. Like, aliens are not treated as kind of cannon fodder. They're not just there to be shot down. It's not a throwaway experience by any means. It's genuinely scary. There's an amazing attention to detail. The aesthetic has been built entirely on the premise that the 1979 Ridley Scott Alien movie was the only part of the canon that ever happened, so it doesn't acknowledge any of the James Cameron stuff, which I really like. Like I think that's a kind of great idea, because there's no reason it has to embrace all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So you have a real kind of kit bash quality to the environment. Like it looks like it was kind of built as a film set in some ways, like in the same way that the original Alien was. The computers are built to the same specifications. They've got a really nice VHS effect on like the menu screens and stuff like that. Like the text is very much like the kind of like programming a VCR, which is kind of unusual, but very, very cool. And I played it with Tom Senior, our online editor, who was sat next to me, and I completed the demo in about, I don't know, like a few minutes less than he did, and we both had completely different experiences. Basically the demo starts, so you're in this kind of hub area where you see very, very briefly, you see like an alien movement on your tracker, which was I guess a tiny bit cheap because it was a kind of scripted moment,
Right.
but nevertheless it kind of sets you up for what follows, which is you kind of go through this door and you're in this almost like arena like place. It's like a kind of circular environment with a room in the middle, like a circular corridor that all goes around this one room, and the alien is kind of unleashed within it, and you can hide within lockers, hide under tables, and you have to basically escape the alien and run from like one part of the environment to another, kind of hitting these switches, which allows you to get to the to the escape pod, which gets you away from the alien. And it's very survival horror. There's no kind of sense of action to it at all, really. It is all about the kind of tension of facing that one enemy and how differently it reacts in certain situations. Like I did the same thing twice in a row, which is I hid in the locker and then I kind of tried to keep down and run away. And the first time it kind of caught me because the way it was moving around the environment was completely different. And before the demo, we were showing a tree of the AI behavior and how it can react differently to certain circumstances. Sometimes it will just kind of like mull around. Sometimes it will check lockers for creatures, and it's scary, man. Like the way it moves, it's kind of like a quite hulking compared to the sort of dog-like way that the aliens are portrayed in Colonial Marines and other video games. So it's anything but throwaway. And to see a big studio making a game like this is unusual and very, very cool. I think it's really going to find an audience. I think it might be a bit of a slow burn, but I think that a lot of people will respond to this game, particularly if they love that property and feel that property has been devalued in the video game space.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for it. I'm very intrigued at how they're going to stretch it out over to the whole game, how long it's going to be. That hopefully they won't fall back on some of the more tried and tested mechanics of that world. Certainly it was enough to sustain a game like Outlast for about 4 or 5 hours before that started to wear a little thin towards the end, but I think that was more design decisions rather than the gameplay. It's a game with no combat in, where you basically just hide. So I definitely think, and that game doesn't have very good AI either, but it's just the atmosphere is strong enough. So yeah, I'm very, very excited by that game. I'm kind of tempering my own excitement, which I do with every game really. Anyway, I don't like to get myself too excited about anything that's still quite a long way off. But it's excellent that Sega and Creative Assembly, obviously, how many times have people been asking for this game, and very rarely when you ask for something like that you actually end up getting it, but that's exactly what's happening. So it's very good that people have been listening. Yeah, totally.
I think that it's Sega making a game, like you say, that people just have wanted for so long, and I don't know. While it kind of feels less aggressively commercial than something like Colonial Marines, so like as a player, I don't really care about that stuff. I just want something that's going to validate that property.
Yeah,
and to see genuinely experimental AI in a game that's a licensed game, that's really exciting to me. Like I think that it's definitely one to keep an eye on. I think it's going to find a lot of fans. But like you say, the structure of it is going to be really important. Like how long they can sustain something like that, because it feels like the sort of thing that could last for 4 or 5 hours and then be one and done, and then maybe you kind of replay it and get the most out of the replay value. But I don't know. It's kind of a tricky line they have to toe, because we had a very short space of time in which to experience that AI and that type of world. And how it functions over a long period of time will be instrumental to its success, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really will. But yeah, that's definitely exciting. Okay, for me, my number 5 then, another game that's there's something to get excited about in the future, but you can play it right now, is Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. Have you had time to play this yet?
I'm so sorry that I haven't, because I can't live with the fact there's a Metal Gear Solid game out there that I haven't played. That
And
kills me.
So
What are
yeah,
you
I've
playing
gone.
on?
Sorry, what you say?
What are you playing on right now?
I'm playing on Xbox One. So
Okay.
yeah, I played it for last week's show. Completed the Ground Zeroes mission in about 90 minutes, and tremendous fun it was. And then Chet and I had a conversation about whether or not it's a demo and stuff, and we kind of came to the conclusion it is, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. And we didn't really come onto opinion on whether or not it was worth the money, because that's completely dependent on a million different factors. But it is what it is, and certainly what it's got me most excited about is the Phantom Pain. I'm in a situation where with this particular game I didn't have to pay for it, so I can't really justify the value. But what I can talk about is the quality. Like, I'm a big Metal Gear fan. I always consider Metal Gear Solid 3 is the reason I managed to get into this industry in the first place. It's the first video game review I wrote. I kind of attached it with my other little bits and bobs that I wrote when I applied for my first job back in Games TM back in 2005. Yeah, I think it's 2005. Yeah, a long time ago. And I managed to get that job, so I always has a special place in my heart for that reason. And it's because also it's an amazing game. But I played 4, obviously finished 4, but that game just left many bad tastes in my mouth. There are many elements in that game which I thought were fantastic. There's some amazing moments, but I certainly had no inclination to replay it, and I certainly never wanted to see that final cutscene ever again. Fuck me. But this game, Ground Zeroes, as short as it is, even the initial mission, and I'll talk briefly about some of the later missions as well. Even just that initial mission is so exciting to see what could be for the Phantom Pain. One thing I have to say about it, it's so smooth. I know the Xbox One version is supposed to run at 720 and the PS4 is supposed to run at 1080 or whatever. Some games you can really notice that. I haven't actually seen the PS4 version in the flesh, but I can't see it making a huge amount of difference. It looks glorious on Xbox One. That's absolutely lovely. And I mean, you talk about locked 60 frames per second properly. Like, it's rare on a console for a game to be that smooth. And the way that the sticks are so nice on both the next gen controllers, that there's a level of smoothness to it that just kind of gives it an air of class. It's kind of weird. I wouldn't normally bang on about something being smooth, but it does actually make a difference here. Cool. Anyway, the game itself is, as I said last week, very, very, very well made. There's so many interesting different ways you can attack the problems and the the things that you need to do, the single mission that you need to do. But stealth games have become a bit trite, I think. Talking about Thief sort of purports to have different ways of getting through the environments, but they are like, go stealth, go a bit louder, crawl through that vent that's fucking next to you when you go into, it's not really a very interesting way of doing it, whereas it always seems like there's about 15 different ways you can do anything in Ground Zeroes. For me, it's slightly disappointing that it is its own game and it's not part of the Phantom Pain, even if the Phantom Pain ended up costing some crazy premium price, because I think then it would go down as like one of the greatest levels ever in anything ever, because it's so broad. If every single mission in Phantom Pain has this much breadth to it, it's going to be 10 out of 10. But as it is, yeah, it's highly recommended, given that I'm not going to question anyone's financial circumstances or how much of a Metal Gear fan they are or how much value it is to them. But I know people have got over 10 hours of enjoyment out of this game plus already. And if you're a Metal Gear fan, you need to play it, Samuel.
Yeah, I will, absolutely. And I realised that the reason I haven't heard you talk about it before is because I landed a day and a half ago and haven't listened to last week's episode. That's why, because I just come back from GDC, and I realised that's come up in your episode. So I was like, oh, God, I'm sure I would have heard them talk about that. But that makes sense. Yeah, basically, it's a funny one, because I don't actually, like many people, I don't really buy into the kind of cost factor of it, because, I've bought plenty of games I can complete in 2 hours, but then I play again and again and again. And so and I know that Kojima will make it worth my while. And I think that if people really weighed it up, if they could wait another, let's say, year and a half for Phantom Pain, or they could try a part of that now for a reduced price, then they would definitely take this option every single time. But because it's because the nature of the industry, people will kind of bitch about that. But the fact is, you can play it for like £20 if you buy it on current gen. Like it's not beyond people. I don't think.
Yeah, I think you can even pick it up for like between 12 and 15 quid now on current gen if you look in the right places. That's
pretty damn good, and it still kind of looks impressive on current gen. I've just really kind of sad I haven't had the chance to play it yet. Like I love that. I'm really kind of happy to hear that while they've kind of reinvented the sort of stealth mechanics of Metal Gear, those mechanics still allow for the same level of kind of expression and different circumstances that Metal Gear has always allowed for.
Yeah, they've reinvented them in terms of they've added some very nice mechanics in terms of you can capture the guards and drag them, and then you can interrogate them. It's all done very slickly through kind of on-screen prompts, which look like they were going to be QTEs, but they're not really. And the brilliant thing where you first get spotted and you get a split second to react in slow motion, which is basically just a split second to shoot someone or maybe dive behind a box. But that's a very, very, very nice mechanic. But the rest of it does feel very Metal Gear. Certainly Metal Gear 4 in the fact that you can control it without needing about 9 fingers just to look around the corner. But
you should replay Metal Gear Solid 4 and you will reconsider that statement.
Really? Is it?
The controls are so cumbersome in that game. Yeah, like, aiming doesn't require, like, I think 4 buttons like MGS2 did, but still, it's still, like, it's so far off being, like, even as refined as Gears in terms of the way it controls. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. Well, this definitely, left trigger to aim, you can still do first person aiming by clicking the stick and stuff, but everything about it's super slick. Feels very modern, and there's an almighty cutscene at the end of the demo. Absolutely amazing cutscene. A higher level of production than any of the games that they've done before, but also a higher level of like story. It was much sharper, quicker, snappier dialogue. You don't really know what's going on, but the things that are happening are very exciting and interesting and kind of horrendous in some ways. But yeah, compared to like the fucking plodding, endless chit chat in 4, it makes me very excited for the game. Very excited for Phantom Pain. I think it could be the one.
That's cool. How do you feel about Kiefer?
It kind of was a bit weird at first. You do feel like you're playing as Jack Bauer, but then I definitely just forgot. To be honest, I just kind of forgot that it was him. He's doing a David Hayter impression, but he's also doing himself. One thing I will say that sometimes when you get Hollywood actors in games, they sound like they're phoning in, like Liam Neeson in Fallout. But he doesn't. He clearly sounds like he's giving as much of a shit as he does when he's being Jack Bauer anyway.
Well, I'm going to have to play that this weekend. There is no way I can let that go any longer. There's a Metal Gear Solid game out in the ether, John, and I'm not playing it. What am I doing?
Are you just going to get it on current gen then?
I think so, because otherwise I'm going to have to buy a PS4 or Xbox One to play it. And and Kojima talks a lot about PC, but he hasn't. He hasn't. It took them a year to release Metal Gear Rising on PC, so I don't know. It's gonna have to happen. But I've seen it run on the different consoles, and like I want to see it in 60 frames per second, and I want to see the kind of rain effects look that good. So I don't know. This is one of those kind of like not real dilemmas.
Yes.
I think I'll probably get it on current gen and just play through it, and then probably down the line pick up on next gen when I get around to pick up a PS4.
Yeah, and then obviously you can play the proper game on PS4.
Absolutely, yeah. Whenever that is, like I can see them taking a while with it, but I don't know. I kind of hope it'll. Yeah. I mean, the kind of rumor was early next year, wasn't it? So that would be nice. It's been a long time since we've played a proper Kojima directed Metal Gear game. I think it was Peace Walker in 2010. So we're going to come up to about 5 years since that. So I think it's about time. So yeah, it's cool. I'll check that out. Okay, so my number 4 is South Park: The Stick of Truth.
Fantastic.
I know you've talked about it quite a lot. I was very much intrigued by you and Chet's comments on South Park, actually, because I sort of feel the same as Chet in so much as watching South Park, in that I need to be in the mood for it. to the point where sometimes I can go entire years without watching South Park.
Right.
Like it's just something I just sort of go. I'm just in a phase of South Park, and then I'll just watch it for a while and then tune out of it again. But I agree with you in that this is just such a funny game,
Yeah.
and it kind of. I agree that it kind of condenses a lot of the moments of a lot of the best jokes of South Park into one game, and then in some ways it's like a best of compilation. Some reviewers have kind of expressed that like it's not really kind of got many new ideas of its own in terms of like jokes. It's a lot of kind of rehash jokes, but the way that's kind of woven together through this kind of wider sort of high fantasy parody narrative is just so damn funny. I was really fortunate actually last week. I got to meet Jordan Thomas, who worked on the game in like a kind of consultation capacity, and I kind of one of the things I actually didn't get around to asking about, but I really wanted to ask about, and hopefully we'll get the chance to down the line, was the idea of like timing of comedy in a game, and the idea of being able to live in a joke, like like kind of control your character within a joke. So you are not just kind of a witness onto the joke; you are actually like participating in it.
Yeah.
And I think South Park's really damn good at that. Like in terms of the way they kind of let you interact with that world as a player. It's remarkably well done. Like it's paced like the TV show. It doesn't just look like it, but the kind of rate of jokes is exactly the same. And man, I love it. I'm about 12 hours into it now, and I like that the combat system never really gets too complex. Like I kind of want a game like that to sort of ease me through. Do you kind of get that feeling?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. I know some people don't like it at all, the combat, but I thought it was fun. I thought it was quite fun, and it never taxed me, and the battles were neither too frequent nor too long-winded to ever get in the way, and they were also quite funny. Quite often, like the some of the attacks the enemies would come up with would genuinely make me laugh. I remember, I knew I loved the game within about half an hour when the meth dealer just threw, because I haven't watched South Park for years at this point, years and years and years, and he just got the same thing that's always funny with South Park, just kids doing outrageous things. But this fucking meth dealer just threw a broken bottle in Butters' face, and just the whole image of that happening, I had to pause the game. I was in absolute hysterics. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and that's nothing compared to all the stuff that does happen in the game later on. But I thought I completely agree with you in that I was fine with it easing me through. I think it would have been annoying had I kept dying on what is a reasonably limited turn-based RPG combat system.
Yeah, and it really is. Like, it's built on exactly the same template, essentially, as has been pointed out by many reviewers, as the Mario and Luigi games on Game Boy Advance, DS, and 3DS. But I think that's such a kind of workable system, and such a good way to sort of frame South Park, because I don't think you want it to be like Final Fantasy, where it requires a certain amount of strategy to actually get any further. I think a game like that, because of the kind of flow of the story, if it kind of held you up in the way you were kind of moving through that story, then I think it would actually be quite satisfying. So it's kind of spot on the way it is. Like I'm playing it on console, and the loading times are pretty bad compared to PC, considering how simple the environments seem to be. Like I feel like I'm looking at kind of flash animation sometimes. It's impressive art direction and everything. I don't understand why it's loading. But no, it's fantastic. If you've ever been a fan of that show through any era of it, you can surely appreciate something about it. Like I would imagine, John, that you're the kind of viewer who's sort of like maybe tuned out around like the mid-noughties, something like that.
Even before that, to be honest, sort of around the time of the movie. So long time ago, really. But
you still remember the likes of like when you kind of collecting Chimpokemon in that game?
Oh yeah, all of that stuff. Like the first few seasons, when I first said that, Pokemon, that cranked me up. It was amazing how many references were from the olden days as well. The stuff that I remembered, it made me feel like I'd not missed the show really. But I have seen sporadic episodes throughout, and I've actually watched most of the most recent series since the game came out. But I still the series was really funny, but I still thought the game was funnier somehow.
I think it's because like with the TV show, they kind of know they have to make it. With the game, it was kind of like a point of pride that they were making it. That's at least that's just a kind of guess from the outside looking in. But they get to make a TV show every season. With a video game, they might only get to make one. So it feels like it's been approached with that sort of philosophy, which might be completely wrong, but it feels that way to me. Like it feels like a real passion project.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed with it. I love it, and I'll probably play through it again as well.
Yeah, I think I played the whole thing with a smile on my face from beginning to end. There wasn't a point where I wasn't thoroughly enjoying myself.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
So is it me? It is me. Okay, my number 4 is Professor Layton versus or cross or is friends with Phoenix Wright.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
3DS. I actually played this ages ago and was going to talk about it last week. We did the shorter podcast last week, so I thought I'd talk about it this week. It is exactly that. It's a funny game because it is a story where Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright kind of eventually intertwine their worlds in a kind of a hokey story that completely befits the two of them, and it is basically like pulling out a Professor Layton game from your cartridge slot on your 3DS and putting in a Phoenix Wright game, and then swapping them over. But as you go on through the game, but it's a good Phoenix Wright game and it's a good Professor Layton game. Thoroughly good for both. In fact, the thing that I don't like about Phoenix Wright games is the investigation stuff. I always get bored. I love the courtroom stuff. I absolutely love it, even though I'm terrible at it. But I've never really enjoyed the investigation side of those games, and that's what's always ended up putting me off. But that doesn't exist in this game. What does exist is you're not literally doing investigation as Layton for the court cases, but you are doing that in terms of gameplay flow. You're doing Layton stuff, which I like. You know how to play Layton. Everyone knows how to play Layton. Just picking up puzzles. The puzzles are of a high standard, unsurprisingly, and the writing in the courtroom stuff is of a typically high and very funny standard. Very early, I think the first case that you take, the first case you takes, this hilarious security guard is constantly eating chocolate. Just very funny, very very well made. It does feel like two games sellotape together. Eventually, it does start to tie in with each other a bit more, but highly recommended. I don't know how it's done on reviews. It's not. I don't think it's the finest example of either of those games, but very, very good, very well made, and just incredibly charming. It has the charm of Layton and the charm of Phoenix Wright, and somehow, even though they're kind of they're different to each other. I mean, Phoenix Wright's much more sort of high energy, sort of sugary type of charm, and Layton's more casual. There's Englishness to it, but they both it kind of eventually works together, and very, very good.
That's cool. I'm not actually been a fan of Layton since the first game.
Right.
That formula kind of grew tired for me. I've been a fan on and off of Phoenix Wright, but I really loved the last one on 3DS. Have you played that?
No.
You should check it out. Actually, it's one of the strongest in terms of writing in cases.
Okay.
There was. I felt like it went through a bit of a dead spot towards the late noughties, but it's. I don't know. That's. I'm so kind of I'm actually really surprised it's come out in Europe full stop, this game. Even more surprising, it's come out 6 months after the last Layton came out on 3DS.
Yeah.
And the last Phoenix Wright came out on 3DS.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
Yeah, the timing is kind of strange. But no, I might check that out. I don't actually think those universes feel like instinctively they fit together so well. How do they handle the art direction side of things?
It's really, this is why it feels like two different games completely, because Layton looks exactly like Layton and Phoenix just looks exactly like Phoenix, and they don't really do much. I mean, did they carve all I can't even remember now. It's been about a month since I played it. Did they do it all in 3D? I can't even remember. I think they do. I don't know. But yeah, it's two games sellotaped together, but it still works.
That's cool.
It's nice. It's breaking, like you say. Layton gets a bit plodding if you just play Layton, and for me, I'm not a big fan of the investigations at the Phoenix stuff. So to have a Layton game broken up with high energy court cases it's just fun.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I think I'll probably check that out.
Yeah, I said very, very good. It's probably not very, very good. It's thoroughly decent. I think it's probably a better way of describing it.
That's cool. Yeah, I think I'll probably check that out at some point. But my number 3 is a game you talked about a little while ago, John. Is FTL Faster Than Light?
Oh man,
PC.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. I've actually been playing this game on and off for the last last 3 months or so. Like I've been playing it kind of non-stop. I played it a bit before that, probably about like 4 or so hours, kind of stretched across time. But like since I joined PC Gamer, it's become my lunchtime game. And I was really lucky, like a few weeks ago, to meet the creators of the game. It was, in fact, I say a few weeks ago. It was actually like about a week ago. Like I was introduced to them by Tom Senior, our online editor, and it was actually really awkward. Like he'd introduced me as someone who like was a big fan of the game, but I just ended up saying hello in this really awkward way, and I kind of want to say your game is amazing. Like I love kind of imprinting myself on the game, and and it's so impressive the kind of level of self-expression you can kind of put into it just by naming the characters and like approaching it your own way. And so one of the ways in which I've kind of been playing it is I've, for the purposes of a PC Gamer feature, I've been I've been kind of naming the characters like they're Last of the Summer Wine characters. So I've had Compo, Foggy, and Norman on a ship that has that I was basically treating like the Normandy from Mass Effect 2. And basically we're kind of barreling through space. We're unsympathetic. We're on a kind of like a suicide mission. We want to get to the end, but we're going to do it just by being brutal. Like if you get out of our way, you're out. But that kind of approach doesn't really wash in FTL because you're quite underpowered compared to other enemies, and basically crumbled by the fourth world when everyone was on fire, basically except for Compo, who's in the cockpit, desperately fighting a fire with a fire extinguisher. And this kind of slave that I picked up from a slaver ship who I kind of bombarded along the way. And I love FTL's capacity for self-expression. Like it's just I really kind of love what it sort of brings to the to that kind of management genre. It's odd in that if that game was out like 15 years ago, I would have played an absolute ton of it. Like I think it's like incredibly well made and almost feels like it could be like a retro re-release of something that existed many years ago, but actually no one's ever really thought of before, which is just a proper kind of spaceship simulator. I've reached the end like twice, and it took some doing, and it was on easy mode. But
did you beat the boss?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? I've never beaten him
on easy mode, John.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I've still never beaten him on easy mode.
That's cool. Yeah, it's it was a little while ago now, but yeah, it's I don't know, it's phenomenal.
It's an amazing game. I haven't played it for over a year now. I think it was last Christmas that we played a ton of it. But yeah, the capacity for that game to tell stories through its systems is almost unparalleled. And I was initially put off when I heard about it first because I don't like complicated management games. I don't actually like a lot of games that involve complicated spaceships. Why that what's that game that's raised about £700 billion on Kickstarter? The Star Citizen, is it?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's not Kickstarter. I think it's just on their website.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that holds no interest to me whatsoever. But I'm sure it's wonderful for many other people. But there's a simplicity to it that once I got my head around what was happening, which took probably no longer than half an hour, and I realised you could pause it and make decisions and then unpause it, which I think is a crucial thing to learn. It just started to be tremendously enjoyable, and it does, despite it's almost a static game, isn't it? Really, I mean, there's a little bit of animation going on here, and obviously the people move around on the ship, and then the things actually happen on the ship. But apart from that, it's quite static. It feels like you're there, and what an amazing achievement for considering how many games like the one you were talking about on Oculus could go to that length to try and make you feel like you're floating through space, and yet this simple 2D top-down plan of a spaceship and then a little window on the right where your enemy pops up makes you feel like Captain Kirk almost more than Mass Effect did in a weird kind of way.
Yeah, it's strange. Like it's just sort of really good at kind of empowering you as a player in terms of like letting you kind of trust your decisions. It is kind of static, but and like some of the scenarios do repeat themselves, but not to the extent that it's, I don't know, like repetitive.
No.
It's more like you kind of expect them and you preempt them and you kind of approach them in a different way, in a different order. I really am quite a fan of it. It's I don't know. I kind of want. I'm looking forward to the advanced edition. That's kind of why we were kind of meeting them at GDC, is because we were seeing the kind of different scenarios they're adding to it. And they've got Chris Avellone from Obsidian as a, like an extra kind of writer, a guest writer on there to create scenarios, and that's really exciting to me because I think that any way you can sort of mix up the variables of that is a kind of big deal. Like, if, for example, in the advanced edition, they've got an enemy that can suck out the oxygen from any kind of given situation.
Okay.
Like, so having them on your ship is actually really risky. You kind of have to keep them in their self-contained room. But if you manage to get them onto an enemy ship, then they're devastating. Yeah. So it's there's kind of a gamble aspect to it, and that side of things is really cool to me. That's just like it, it kind of it's good. It's really, really strong. I'm looking forward to that, and I will probably continue to play it as I am now, and kind of write like mini features on it, just because I really appreciate the world they've built in that game and the variables you can explore within that.
Yeah, marvellous game. Yeah, it's still highly recommended. It's still always quite cheap on Steam, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Okay, another polar opposite then for my number 3, Titanfall. In fact, on Xbox One. I don't have a huge amount more to say about this game. It's still holding up hugely. I kind of wish that I was playing the PC version with the people that I tend to play with every single session, which is Chet and people we both know. But I must say it's still marvellous on Xbox One. A game of sort of endless moments played out at unbelievably high speed, combining sort of high skill, but not skill that you feel like you're way behind everybody else. You feel like the systems and the mechanics and the controls allow you to execute moments of skill with ease, if that makes any sense. It's almost a contradiction in terms, but it's so well made, and the way you move around as a pilot or indeed as a Titan, so simple yet it has so much depth to it. And even stuff like, I talked about this last week, you make builds for your different scenarios. I've got different Titan builds for different scenarios and different soldier builds for different scenarios, pilots I should say. I don't normally do that in these sorts of games, even games that I've ended up playing far more hours than I've currently played on Titanfall, but something about that game just makes it seem very simple and accessible. The idea of the Titan build that I came to on my own, which is the Strider Titan with the triple threat ammo, which is the 3 bombs, big punch, and have him so he can his dash replenishes really quickly. So the idea being someone who can get in, fuck you up, and get out, like an anti-Titan, and an anti-Titan Titan, in fact. I came up with that on my own. I thought that would be good, and then I go online, and that's like become one of the main builds. So it's like common sense has allowed dumbasses like me to come up with reasonably complicated. Even the idea of having different builds that I think of myself, I always consider that kind of thing beyond me. So that's amazing. I'm just kind of blown away by how good this game is. It's incredibly exciting. There's so much to the maps. There's so much to the combat. There's so many moments. Every single inch of it's just refined and polished and kind of constructed by masters. I'd say masters. I've heard a lot of people saying it's going to be, this is great, but what's the sequel going to be like? But I don't hold that opinion. I think this is here right now. This is an amazing video game that's only getting better the more that I play it, and marvelous stuff.
That's cool. I'm glad to hear it. Like, I think one of our kind of concerns on PC Game was that it might not be kind of built for long-term play, and then a lot of its tricks. I mean, like, while kind of the way the systems play together is really impressive, like long-term play, it might not, kind of support that. Yeah. But yeah, right now it kind of feels like it's the kind of new kid in town when it comes to that sort of genre, and it has needed a refreshing for quite some time. No, I'm really pleased to hear it's positive. I think it's really kind of done huge things for the Xbox One in terms of its fortunes.
Yeah, it definitely has. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's made that console seem extremely appealing, whereas before it was kind of a laughing stock. And even though I'm sure if there had been, this is coming from a place of no knowledge, but I think the PS4 could probably ship this game out without even breaking a sweat at 60 frames at 1080. As it runs on my PC, that is no more powerful than those consoles really is. I think they're pretty much on a level playing field, whereas the Xbox One does feel like it's struggling. So I'm sure that it's probably frustrating for the people that made it that it can't, currently run as well as it should do on that machine. But I can't remember a time where it's ever impinged my enjoyment of the actual game. So fuck it, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I kind of hope it kind of builds an audience over a long period of time, and there's ways in which that can kind of keep developing. I've only played about 3 hours of it myself. I played quite a lot of the beta, but I'm just kind of so positive about that kind of game's future and that studio's future, and the way it might have an impact on the on its competitors.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's such a positive influence to me on everything around it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's shaking things up. It's a very disruptive game, I think, and I'm very excited. This and Destiny later in the year, which I think has the potential to be something truly, truly special. So it's kind of an exciting time, weirdly, for a genre that's become so stale. Yeah, this is the podcast where every single week Chet talks about Battlefield, so we're hardly the podcast to say that we don't play that sort of game anyway. But both he and I are obsessed with tights, as we call it.
Not to mention comparing Battlefield to a wife who falls over.
I kind of tune out when he talks about that.
I understand. After so long, how can you not?
Yeah. But yeah, Titanfall, tights. It's the one.
Yeah,
I've said
cool.
that about 7 games, I think, this episode, so take that with a pinch of salt. It's probably nothing's the one.
That's good to hear. Okay, cool. Well, my number 2 is GTA 5.
Nice.
Basically, I'm not very on this podcast very often, but kind of being reflective of the amount of time I put into a game, it has to be GTA 5 in my number 2, because I've kind of reached a point now that I reached with GTA 3 when I was quite young when I played GTA 3, where I've pushed through the end game content, and I'm so far into it that I'm playing with every single variable of that open world. I've must have played it for north of like 100, 120 hours, something like that. And just a single player. I don't really get into the online stuff too much. I really do kind of love what it brings, to the open world. Like it's a proper sandbox, and I've been testing that theory by doing one very specific thing in the world, which is stealing one of the military jets from Fort Zancudo and trying to land them in one of my hangars in the airport, or in Trevor's case in his airstrip. And so I've gotten so good at that now that I think I've worked out the exact formula for doing it, which is I call a cab and I go to the kind of back entrance of it via the coast. I steal the cab from the cab driver, drive through the fence. There's a kind of back alley that leads to the behind the hangars where the jets are. From that point, I kill all the enemies who are kind of around that sort of area, jump in the jet, and before the first tanks arrived, I've taken off. And then from there, it's kind of a crapshoot as to whether I actually escaped the AA rockets or not. And so, I've gotten so good at it now that I can do that. I mean, almost every single time. Like, I feel like I understand the behavior of the rockets. Like, I know exactly how much fuel there is in the plane. Like, if you get hit a few times, it's weird. GTA's fuel meter. Like, if you get hit a few times, your fuel seems to just deplete like that, and that's kind of it. But I've now got to the point where this ridiculously powerful jet I can kind of escape in quite easily. It's I've just been enjoying going around the open world in one of those, really, just blowing up different parts of the environment. That's kind of proper kind of post end game content, in that you can only do this when you reach a specific point of the game where you're good enough to do this. And I'm absurdly into it, seriously. It's just it's superb. Like I've completed the story so long ago, but that world is still giving me something, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. I still haven't completed the story, embarrassingly. It's still there waiting for me to go back to, but that's because of the bug that happened. But
Of course, yeah.
yeah, I did. This is a game that I desperately do want to go back to, but I am kind of holding fire to see if it does appear on next gen, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But I'm sure it will. But I feel like I want to go back to see that game at its absolute best. You know, see it on its very best day, and yeah, if that's coming, then I'll probably wait for that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I kind of understand that mentality. I think my kind of take on it is that I will just play it again, even if it's on next gen or PC.
Yeah.
Like I will not kind of I will not feel deprived by going to that world again and existing in that world with those characters for that length of time. I don't think the characters are most likable of any kind of Rockstar game. I like a few of them. I really like Trevor, actually.
I do.
He grows on you in a way that I don't think any of the other characters quite do. I like Michael in some ways, but he's a little bit reprehensible to the point where it's sort of hard to like him. Then there's obviously Franklin. He's just kind of nothingy.
Yeah.
He's sort of like, I don't know, the archetypal sort of gangbanger of GTA, but without any of the interesting aspects or aspects that make you kind of empathize with him. But Trevor's something else. He's kind of a loose cannon with a heart, and yeah, you kind of like him the more time you spend with him. And he also has actual kind of like post-story content in the way that the characters don't quite. So he's an interesting character. But yeah, for me, it's about just kind of playing with the consequences of that world and what you can kind of do within that. I still haven't found all the UFOs in the game. Whenever I do find them, I have a weird kind of freak out, like because the sound they make is just so kind of strange.
Right.
And I still haven't found the underwater shark skeleton, which I must do at some point. But it's so impressive, so impressive. Yeah, I love GTA 5, and I'll play the online bits at some point, but that's the side of things where I'm waiting to see if it appears on next gen, because surely they'll increase the amount of players in there if they release on next gen.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be very cool if they do.
Yeah.
And hopefully increase the traffic and things like that as well, because it does feel a little bit dead when you play online. It's still very impressive, and there's still stuff going on, but it doesn't feel as vibrant and as alive as the single player.
That's cool. Well, it's very much, it's the same thing for me, really. It's just wanting to kind of see that world at its best, and I feel like online on current gen consoles, just from what I've seen, doesn't feel like it'll quite do it for me in the same way that playing single player does.
Yeah. I think you're probably right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. My number 2 is a current gen game. Weirdly, it's Dark Souls. This could be my 1 or 2. I played it for way longer than I thought I would. I don't know what compelled me to put this back on. I think it was probably my buddy Dave Turner's playing it and me deciding to join in. That's what I said last week. And I've kind of had a mixed reaction to it. It's a very strange game, and I've said before, I'm not in the place to talk about it as many people are. People who have played it many times through, they're very qualified. Their opinions, are very well researched and whatnot. But I now think I've played enough to have a pretty decent opinion of the game, and I find it's weird. Parts of me think it's how other people describe it, this amazingly well designed, very, very particular and deliberate video game with extraordinary world building and an amazing atmosphere, and it demands so much from you, but you get so much back from it. I definitely have that side of it to me. But then again, I came up to the Capra Demon, the infamous Capra Demon, which is like the 4th boss in the game, I think. Yeah, I think that's right. And there is no way of describing it other than being fucking wank. It's absolute horseshit. I find it's inexcusably shit. A boss that's in a tiny room that has a couple of jumping dogs, where it basically you can quite easily get killed in one hit by, not because you need to dodge or you need to do this, but because the camera gets stuck on walls. I died multiple times where the camera got confused in a corner and sent me left, even though I was holding right as I rolled. A miserable few hours spent. I finally beat it. I felt no satisfaction whatsoever after beating it, apart from the fact that I can now see the next bit of the game, and it kind of there's a concept that I've forgotten the name of that a friend of mine keeps referring to, and it's the concept of reading a newspaper and reading a story that's bullshit and disagreeing with everything you say and thinking this is shit, and then turning to the next page and reading the rest of the newspaper as if that article didn't exist and the rest of the newspaper must be right and it's, the rest of it's well written. I can't remember the exact name of that concept, but that's kind of how I started to feel afterwards with Dark Souls. It's like, oh, okay, well that bit of shit, but the rest of it's going to be great, and I just think, well, actually, maybe not. So I've played a good lot more than that, and it is very, very good, but I don't know if it's ever going to do for me what it does for some people. I think it must. It taps into a certain part of the brain. I kind of felt it at times. It was tapping into the same part of my brain as when I very, very, very briefly got obsessed with the fruit machine. I say very briefly because even calling it obsessed is melodramatic. This lasted one day. But in a job that I used to work in, there was a fruit machine in the pub downstairs, and I used to play it at lunchtimes because I was so bored. And then I found myself in the afternoon, all I could think about were the flashing, spinning lights of that fruit machine, and I couldn't wait to go back downstairs at 5 o'clock and play it again. And then I thought immediately that day I must never play fruit machines ever again because they're obviously very dangerous. And it was a very similar feeling. I was sitting here trying to work on Tuesday, and I kind of thinking about fucking Dark Souls and the little numbers that come off the people when you kill them.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was a particularly... I didn't feel wholesome about that at all. So I'm still really undecided about the game. I don't want to... Like I said, my opinion isn't anywhere near as qualified as many people's. And there were times where I thought it was marvellous when I was playing it. But I'll see. I'm going to go back to it, but it probably won't be for another few weeks again. I need to give it another break. I feel I can go in and I won't have lost a step. So we shall see. For the people who are interested, I'm currently in... a one-bomb fight into Blight Town. I'm not scared of it, but apparently it gets murderous down at the bottom. I don't know. Yeah, I'll probably keep playing it. I don't know why. There's something about the community around it, and even in people that I know through Twitter, and everybody's encouraging you. It'd be nice if they did that for the rest of your life instead of just in this video game, but that's just the way that we are these days, I guess.
Yeah, I think it is. I actually must confess it's not something I've ever engaged with, and that's mainly due to a lack of time.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that I understand requires hours of commitment. Dave Scarborough, who I used to work with, he basically played the game when he was in hospital and had hundreds of hours to kill.
Right.
If I ever end up in hospital with hundreds of hours to kill, that's what I'll play.
It feels like a game to play in hospital because it is about as depressing as being there. But yeah, that's what it is. It certainly didn't fill me with joy at any point. But
that's
yeah, I don't know. I'll keep playing it though. It's like nothing else. I know that much.
How long will you play it for? Do you reckon?
I don't know how big it is, but I mean, unlike something like Skyrim where you feel like you're uncovering everything, it's quite. Someone will probably yell at me for saying this, but it's kind of linear. I mean, it's not because there's different ways you can go and different order you can do things in, but. It's not a big open world like a Skyrim or something like that. You are going basically from A to B. I always feel like you have to qualify everything when you say that. Obviously, I know that there's more to it than that. But however, I'll play it until I finish it. I think, as miserable as I'm sure that entire experience will be, will I feel any sense of triumph from doing that? I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, it's got its hooks in. I know that much.
Yeah, well, that's I don't know. It feels like something you've got to culturally experience in games, and it's on my pile of shame, you know.
Yeah, it was too many people have said it's the best game ever made to me not to play it.
Yeah, exactly. Too many people whose writing I really respect.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you say, yeah, if you're playing it on Twitter, it's the one game you'll get more support for on Twitter. You don't get that with GTA 5. Everyone's like, you're still playing that, you know. Because I've done everything, and it's like, yeah, whatever. But no, that's cool. That's good to hear. I just think it's really good that that a game like that can find an audience.
And do very well as well. Yeah,
an insane audience as well. Like if you look at the kind of opening week sales for it on, for the Dark Souls 2 on PS3 and 360, like you're looking at, I don't know, like almost kind of Titanfall matching sales now. Yeah. That's really something. Like, and it doesn't have nearly the same sort of marketing push. It's just about word of mouth. I'm really sort of pleased to hear it. But we'll check that out at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's probably one of those things that you have to do, which is, although the PC version's a nightmare. So I'd recommend playing it on there. If they do it again for 350 on Xbox, that's why I ended up picking up again on that. I wouldn't say don't get it. That was a terrible sentence. I would say do get it. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's okay. So my number one is a game that I definitely know you won't like, John, and that's Final Fantasy X HD.
You'd be surprised. You'd be
Really?
surprised, Samuel.
No
I
way.
have plenty to say on Final Fantasy X.
Okay, well, I'm kind of intrigued. Basically, when I was about 15, this is my favorite game of all time. 14, actually. This was the first Final Fantasy where they had proper kind of 3D environments. They abandoned the world map stuff and they made the world a lot more coherent. There's big problems with it in the presentation in terms of like voice acting. The voice acting in the game is notoriously bad. A lot of people know about the kind of famous laughing scene, which you might have seen on like YouTube, where the character's like, I don't know, like
No,
Tina.
more than that, so I think you'd be surprised, Samuel. I think you'd be surprised.
This isn't going to be your number one, is it?
No. That would be a big surprise. No, but I didn't finish Final Fantasy X, but I got very almost to the very end.
Wow, I'm actually surprised to hear that. But yeah,
that's the furthest I've got in any of them, in fact.
Yeah, that's okay. Surprised to hear, but yeah, it's been re-released on PlayStation 3 with HD textures, and I must say the HD textures are kind of so good. They've remodeled all the characters; they look completely different, and I quite like that because it adds value to it to me. Like it's not like playing the same game from 12 years ago, because you're actually playing a game that's almost like it's different to how you remember it, as well as the character models. The music has been re-recorded, so it sounds different as well, and the HUD is different. So it's, I don't know, I quite like the kind of novelty of it being a game that you have fond memories of, but that memory is slightly twisted by the kind of update of it. So it's never quite how you remember it, but yeah, you sort of, I don't know. It's that's a cool way of doing a re-release to me. It's not just putting the game in 1080p and re-releasing it. It's actually doing a proper job with it.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the combat system and the progression-based system as well, which is a sphere grid, which is a board game-like layout for kind of leveling up. So each character starts in a certain place, and when they level up, they get one place to move around that board. They can fill in bits on that grid that upgrade their abilities. Yeah, so you kind of like say you move one space and you land on like a strength sphere. If you kind of fill that in, the strength sphere, then you increase your strength, and so on and so forth. And you can actually diverge from the path and max out your character and teach your character different moves as well. So if you don't want your character to be a black mage, then you can move them around and stuff like that, which is actually like really kind of quite radical for a Final Fantasy game, and has been replicated by a few different titles. But yeah, I still think it's really impressive. The voice acting, like, I can't quite tolerate in the same way that I used to. I kind of used to just accept it was bad, but now I'm just sort of like, I've heard a lot of these voice actors in other games and like TV shows and stuff, and I know they can do better. It just feels like this was at a time when voice acting was fairly new and therefore utterly unremarkable. But yeah, like in HD, it's kind of a dream. I'm playing it on PS3, but I'm going to get it on Vita as well. It's I've always wanted a kind of definitive version of that I can play on HD console, and I've finally got it.
I certainly have no intention of playing it again, but it is a game that I got to the very, very end of. I think I was couldn't get past the boss right at the end, after Seymour. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, after the one where you fight him and he's near a cliff. Some woman with this, like, turns you into a zombie or something. I mean, this was 12 years ago or 13 years ago whenever it came out, so I can't quite remember. But yeah, right towards the end. But actually, that was probably the one that I liked the most. The voice acting is obviously horrendous, but yeah, for some reason it didn't bother me at the time either. I was a bit older than you, but it still didn't bother me. And I love the fact that, I don't know if this is actually the case or this is just my interpretation of it, that your dad was a wave. Is that right?
He was a whale. It kind of. It's actually got quite a, like, oh god, this is so hard to explain without sounding like a kind of tinfoil hat crazy person. But it's got quite a deeply embedded story that's kind of quite. It criticizes religion in quite a strong way, organized religion.
Right.
Basically, it's kind of this self-perpetuating cycle where this kind of church that's at the center of the world basically uses fear, the fear of this kind of this giant creature kind of ruining their way of life, to control them into praying to this god. So it's this kind of weird kind of cycle, like the creature that kind of terrorizes this world, Spira, like it's actually created by the church itself. So it's kind of quite it's weird. It's kind of the idea that the religion is preaching kind of fear to just control its populace in the way they behave, and it's strange that's manifested in different ways. Like certain characters won't use forms of technology because they're worried that that's kind of seen as anti-religious and stuff like that, and so there's quite an interesting undercurrent there. And there are basically cultures that are a lot more sort of socially progressive are treated as outcasts because they're not part of the church, and it turns out that the whole kind of church thing's a fallacy, and that this creature at the center of it that's kind of that's killing people and is a threat to the world was actually created by the church itself to control its people.
Okay.
So the thing is, the game never explains it as coherently as that, and I only explained it barely coherently. So it's a hard one to kind of justify to people, but for the fans of that game, like it's so impressive. It's also the most cheerful Final Fantasy game there is. Which is a kind of like a kind of big deal for me. I think that a lot of those games are quite angsty and a bit miserable, and it's set in worlds that are quite oppressive. And I don't think that Final Fantasy X has nearly that kind of same level of angst about it. It's really a much more cheerful game set in a kind of quite a tropical world with its own sort of interesting vibe to it. I'm a fan, and I think it's held up very well.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I will never play it again, but that is a game that I'm well aware of its work, and I enjoyed it a lot at the time.
Yeah.
The guy with the big hair, he was alright.
Well, I think that's that thing where, like, unless you really love an old game, then why would you go back and play it, you know?
Yeah, completely. And there are very few that I do.
Exactly. HD release, it's just got to be... The way you spend your money, a HD release has to just be based on whether you love that game at the time or not.
Yeah.
If you didn't, then there's no point in kind of indulging there.
No, completely not. All right, then. My number 1 is your number 10. It's Infamous Second Son. On PlayStation 4. I'd say I'm probably it feels like I'm about between half and 2/3 of the way through the story now, and done a lot of side content along the way. It is what it is. It is obviously the third Infamous game from Sucker Punch. I was actually quite a big fan of the first two. Finished the first one, liked it a lot. It lost its way towards the end, as so many games do, but brought a lot of interesting things into the open world. I thought it was a far better game than Prototype. The two were compared because they came out very close to each other. Far more accomplished game, I thought. And also didn't have that kind of undercurrent of genuine unpleasantness that Prototype has. And the second one, though, I thought I ended up playing the PS Plus version of the second one, and was actually really impressed by that. That introduced the cover system, and that gave the combat a lot more depth and a lot more... for an open world game that could potentially be chaotic, it kind of gave the combat a bit more structure. It gave you your powers straight from the beginning, so you're grinding around this equivalent in New Orleans straight away, and it just added more powers. And I thought it was good and kind of underrated. This is obviously a new story. You play as you said, Delsin Rose, voiced by the man who's everywhere at all times, Troy Baker. Does a very good job. He kind of channels a little bit of himself, a little bit of what's the guy's name? I'm blanking on his name. The other big voice actor, Nolan North, and a little bit weirdly, there's a bit of Matthew McConaughey in there. Really, like kind of old Matthew McConaughey, with is the jokey guy, and new True Detective, Dallas Buyers Club. Matthew McConaughey. He's definitely been listening to that guy during his voice work for this, but that's good. And the game hangs off Delsin. And his quest to save his tribe. He's kind of from a Native American tribe. It's all a bit... It doesn't matter. There's like a old woman. He needs to help people. That's how. It doesn't matter. Who cares? To do this, he needs to go to Seattle and basically get new powers, wreck shit. It's one of those stories that's an actually very good story, but the cutscenes are of a high standard, and the voice acting is of a high enough standard that and the cutscenes are short enough that it makes it all enjoyable. The most obvious thing to say about the game is how fucking good it looks. It looks absolutely outstanding on PS4. I mean, particularly the power effects. The first one that you get is the smoke power, which has some very nice effects that you can smash up huge parts of the environment. Any of the environment is controlled by the bad guys, who are just this like faceless corporation that hate people with powers, but it's also run by people with powers. Any kind of thinking about narrative for more than a second, it just turn your brain into sludge. But you can smash up all their environment with the like smoke missiles and stuff, and it all falls apart. It looks amazing. Then you get the neon power after about 3 or 4 hours, which allows you to kind of run like the Flash and run up walls. And that just looks amazing. It looks like it's based on those kind of light trails that you can do with photography or whatever they're called. And yeah, it just looks like that in game form. I'm always amazed at every new generation how good glowy things looked. I remember in Halo 1 how good glowy things looked, and then how good they looked on PS3 games, and now this like glowiness is of an unbelievable level. My concerns with the game, though, are that I don't think it's as accomplished in terms of its combat as number 2. It's way more chaotic. It's basically a question of just getting spammed the whole time by these enemies, some of which also have powers. And you end up in a situation where you're kind of getting smashed from all angles, snipers, rockets and things, dashing away because you can always dash with your powers, recharging and going back in for more. And it doesn't quite live up to the power fantasy of what the rest of the game manages to achieve. And it's a combat heavy game. Every single main mission tends to be just go to a place and kill everyone, and then then you win. That's basically the game. And the combat doesn't quite. It's not world class. I would say that it's not world class. I think I had higher hopes for it. I heard like one of the Halo Reach lead designers was the main combat designer, or one of the main designers on the game. So I was kind of hoping for a bit more depth to that. But as you get the more powers and you start to level up those powers, it does get better, and you get a bit stronger, and you get way more options. So it ends up being fine. But the most enjoyable thing about the game is kind of just charging around the world and smashing things up and using your powers and just enjoying this sumptuous, gorgeous recreation of Seattle. It doesn't have the depth or the detail of something like Los Santos. Nowhere near. It does feel kind of dead in some ways, but the skylines are amazing and it moves so smoothly. And it just make you, especially when you get the neon power and you can run up walls, gives you a sense of genuine freedom and movement that is that's really empowering and kind of exciting. And it's an enjoyable game. This is the game that I played in the downtime when I haven't been playing Dark Souls, and they're quite a contrast to one another. This is a game about just having a laugh, basically, as much as some of the story likes to take itself a bit too seriously, and has a weird attitude to drugs. It kind of has. I've read it as a right-wing attitude to drugs. I don't even know if it's anything that sophisticated, to be honest. It's just kind of like drug dealers are bad, drugs are bad, prostitutes are bad. It's kind of like the attitude I had of drugs when I was about 7 and I didn't know what they were. It's kind of a bit weird, but regardless, the game is it's fine. The PS4 needed a game like this right now. I think it needed a game like Titanfall more, to be honest. Not that it's not doing well, but it's getting to the point where it needs something for people to play on it. I think Infamous is a good, high-quality stopgap for that. I don't think it's the game that people are going to be telling you to run out and buy a PS4 for, unless you just love the way it looks, and it does look spectacular. But very enjoyable, daft, kind of easygoing fare that, much like the character himself, it's just... I don't think it was ever supposed to be the game, the Last of Us, the one like that. No, I've got to stop saying the one, but I think it does its job well. It's got a lot of 7s. I think that seems like a fair score, and I like it. I dig it, but I'm not going to be playing it again. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've played through both the first 2 Infamous games, and I played this one enough, I think, to kind of feel like I understood what it was about, which is that it is the same, but everything about it has been elevated in terms of presentation.
Yeah.
Like, it's the kind of way you interact with the world felt the same, like, while the controls have been remapped a little bit, like sprinting across environments and stuff like that. It didn't feel radically different from kind of gliding and climbing as Cole in Infamous 2 and Infamous 1. But yeah, it's undoubtedly impressive. Like, you know, this in terms of its kind of like particle effects and stuff on Delson's
amazing.
powers. Yeah, incredible. And they've kind of modelled the character on Troy Baker a little bit as well.
Yeah.
I met him last year, and it's kind of uncanny. Like his face is pretty much the same as Delson Rowe, only with a beanie hat and other kind of details. But yeah, it's interesting how you can sort of see his facial expressions when he's sort of just performing basic actions, and it's just really kind of impressive to look at on that basic level. The frame rate I found a little bit stodgy. When you're in kind of busy city surrounds, then you get onto a roof, look to the sky, and the frame rate goes to like 60 frames per second. It's which I think Infamous 2 had as well. It is
definitely variable. Yeah, it's definitely variable. But
I'm not a kind of frame rate sort of. I don't worry about that sort of stuff. But I like that it exists. Like it's almost the kind of perfect sort of launch window game, and certainly a good counterpoint to Titanfall, even if it's not quite as impressive. In terms of its impact on a larger player base as Titanfall. It's still important, I think, to people who've bought the PlayStation 4, and I think it's probably the game people have been most excited about for it.
Yeah.
So no doubt some of the less excited reactions will come as a bit of a disappointment, but having played the previous Infamous games, I know that they're sort of entertaining for like 10 or 12 hours. And yeah, I mean, fair play to Sucker Punch. They've really kind of got the most out of that platform. And,
yeah, unquestionably. I think this is nice as a justification for next-gen tech as well, because, the first Ratchet games that came out on PS4, I say, not talking about the exclusives now, like the games that existed on previous platforms and stuff, maybe Battlefield is not an example of this, but most of them weren't maybe as impressive as the stuff with you and I have seen plenty of stuff on PC that was kind of at a level higher than a lot of this stuff. I'd say apart from NBA 2K14, which just looks outstanding, and then you got a game like Killzone, which looks amazing, but it's fucking awful. So it's nice to have a game like Infamous that feels like, okay, maybe I could have played a game that plays like this before, but I certainly couldn't have played a game that looks like this before, and that's probably kind of why you're investing in next gen tech at this time. I think hopefully the truly revolutionary games are going to come, but then again, what is revolutionary these days? Things are changing. Morpheus, Twitch, indie games, everything's changing. So hopefully you will big AAA, for want of a less annoying phrase, games that try different things will come. But right now, like you say, I think it's good that it exists. I think it comes at the right time. And it is good fun. If you have a PS4, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I will say it does start a little slow, but don't worry, it does pick up. It definitely does pick up.
Well, so, I mean, I feel like I'm always going to regret asking this question because I know your response will be one of apathy. But what's Delson's relationship with his brother like? Is it something worth paying attention to?
That's probably the highlight of the narrative stuff. Yeah, he kind of plays the straight man to Delson's kind of it's almost like irritant little brother, but he kind of has a kind of cocky charm to him. Troy Baker pulls it off basically. With a less skilled voice actor, it would have just been annoying. But and done many times before. But the two guys, Troy Baker and I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head now, who plays his brother. They do a good job, and there's kind of a chemistry there where they never talk about. Well, certainly in the amount of time I've played, they never really talk about the past or the grown up or anything like that. But you can kind of get a sense of their relationship over the years just through general in-game dialogue, which is both skillful writing and mainly skillful acting, I'd say. But yeah, that's actually quite enjoyable.
That's cool, man. No, I will probably check that out when I eventually get a PS4. Like between that and MGS Ground Zeroes, like it's almost there in terms of like pushing me to get it. I don't know. I think I need a kind of couple more console appropriate games, and then I'll be pushed to get it. Because yeah, PS4 looks like kind of a nice gadget just to own,
Oh yeah, it's a lovely piece of kit. It really is, and it's kind of nice to put it back on for a proper release again after struggling with the Xbox One. I like the Xbox One. It's like a sort of really flawed mate that you have that you like, but is going to eventually let you down.
Not like Chet, right?
What?
Not like Chet, right?
Not like Chet, no. Maybe no. Forward, just like everything works,
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. I'll check that out. That's awesome.
Wicked. Okay, well. Hold on, I'm echoing here. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Can you hear the echo?
No.
Right, who knows if this will end up on a recording. If you can hear two versions of me, I've turned into Delsin Rowe, so you should be excited for me. And if not, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much to you, Samuel, for being a part of the show this week.
Yeah, dude, it was an absolute pleasure, and hopefully you'll have me again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Check out PC Gaming Magazine. It's legendary, and it's keeping the print dream alive, and we need that because print magazines are wonderful things. So go and check out the latest issue of that. They can go and buy a digital version where?
It's on iTunes, it's on Zinio, a whole bunch of digital platforms, and also check out our site, pcgamer.com. Like, we've just started a whole bunch of new regular features. So yeah, by all means, head over there. It's it's really, really cool. You should awesome. You should check it out.
You definitely should. Mm-hmm. And you can check Sam out on Twitter at
Samuel W. Roberts. But I will say in advance, I talk absolute shite on Twitter. It's not representative of any person I've ever known, like living or dead. It's just a bunch of nonsense. But yeah, Samuel W. Roberts, if you do feel like following me. Yeah,
you definitely should. I'm obviously at John Denton. Follow Chet Roivas as well. At Chet and John's. Check out the YouTube channel. There's a video review, in fact, of Metal Gear up there that you might want to watch, Sam.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
See ya!
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.